Oppo Find X6 camera test. Peace be upon you, my dear friends and followers of the channel. How are you today? I hope you are well and in good health. Today with you is a beautiful, new and important video for everyone. This video will be called the Oppo Find X6 camera test. But before watching the video, subscribe to the channel and like and share so that it reaches the largest number of people. Now let's watch the video and I hope you like it. We put the Oppo Find X6 through rigorous XmarK camera tests to measure its performance in photo and video quality and zoom from an end-user perspective. In this video I will demonstrate the device's performance in a variety of tests and several common use cases and aim to highlight the most important results of our testing through a snippet of the data captured. Overview. Main camera specifications. Primary camera, 50MP 1/1.56 sensor, 1A micro pixels, 24mm f/1.88 equivalent lens, autofocus, optical image stabilizer. Ultra-wide camera, 50MP 1/2.8 sensor, 0.64A micro pixels, 15mm equivalent, 2.05 equivalent lens, autofocus. Telecamera, 50MP 1.56 sensor, 1A micro pixels, 65mm f/2.6 equivalent lens, autofocus, optical image stabilizer. Pros: good detail and low noise in photos and video, accurate and repeatable autofocus, good exposure in fairly wide dynamic range for photos and video, overall pleasant skin tones, accurate depth estimation in bokeh mode, fixed exposure and color in video. Cons: incidental white balance in daylight, low contrast, issues with HDR images captured in bright light, warm colors are slightly washed out in low light videos with a slight jelly effect recorded on a tripod thanks to the MediaTek Dimensity 9200 chipset. The Oppo Find. Overall, the device delivered a very balanced performance, performing well across all test attributes. Even with a smaller sensor in the base unit compared to the Pro model and other flagship devices, the Find X6 manages to achieve an excellent balance between texture and noise in both photos and video. The zoom remotes are the same as on the Find X6 Pro, which, combined with excellent software solutions, resulted in an excellent zoom user experience in our tests. Overall, the camera's biggest positive point is its lack of any serious drawbacks, making it a great choice for all types of smartphone photography. Friends and family. When used by friends and family, the Oppo Find X6 tied with the Find X6 Pro for the joint top score. All aspects of image quality required for a good selfie are fine-tuned on the Find X6. In our testing, portrait photos showed good exposure in natural skin tone rendition across most scene types and skin tones, even the darker skin tones that plague many of Oppo's competitors. This remained true when using the dedicated portrait mode. Only in some high contrast scenes did our testers notice some underexposure or slightly low contrast. Low lighting. The Oppo Find X6 also manages to deliver great image quality in low light. Target exposure. Maintain the atmosphere of low light scenes and color rendition was fairly neutral, although there was an occasional orange tint. The level of detail was fairly high, with image noise generally controlled. About XmarK camera tests. XmarK camera evaluations are conducted in laboratories and in real-world situations using a variety of subjects. The results are based on objective tests, in which results are calculated directly by measurement software on our laboratory setup, and on perceptual tests, where a sophisticated set of metrics allows a team of image experts to compare aspects of image quality that require human judgment. The smartphone testing involves a team of engineers and technicians for about a week. Image, zoom and video quality are scored separately and then combined into an overall score for comparison between cameras in different devices. For more information about the XmarK camera protocol in our tests, the Oppo Find X6 delivered solid photo performance, with generally accurate subject exposure and a wide dynamic range. Additionally, the camera produced nice skin tones and natural white balance. A fairly wide depth of field meant that background subjects and group shots were rendered fairly sharply and texture rendering and noise reduction were well balanced. Unwanted photo effects were also under control. While the camera doesn't offer a shutter delay, our testers noticed a slight delay between pressing the shutter and actually taking a shot. Close-up photography. Macro photography is the third new usage score introduced with Xmark version 5. It evaluates the camera's ability to capture detail at distances of less than 10 centimeters and at magnifications as close as possible to 1:1. The Oppo Find X6 did a good job when set to macro mode. The loss of sharpness was noticeable around the edges of the frame, but otherwise fine detail was well preserved and image noise was well under control. Exposure was accurate and the camera captured beautiful colors. In this comparison we can see that the Oppo Find X6 recorded fine details slightly better in macro mode than the Vivo X90 Pro and Xiaomi 13 Pro. The camera produced good exposure in most test conditions, even in low light where the Oppo managed to maintain the atmosphere well. Additionally, the dynamic range was fairly wide. In some difficult scenes, our experts noticed issues with facial exposure. In this simple scene, the camera had to produce a fairly bright exposure while freezing the action and maintaining good light and shadow detail. For Oppo, which comes with a smaller image sensor and therefore less light gathering ability than some of its ultra-premium rivals, this has proven to be a difficult task. In our tests, the Oppo Find X6 produced fairly good colors. Skin tones were accurate in most conditions and most skin types. Colors were generally nice and vibrant. While the orange tint was noticeable in most indoor and low light scenes, this helped maintain the low light atmosphere. Our testers also noticed a yellow, green tint in some outdoor scenes, as well as some white balance instability, especially in bright light. In this sample, we can see that skin tones were rendered differently on all three cameras. Both the Apple iPhone 14 Pro and Oppo Find X6 show nice skin tones, with the Find X6 being slightly more orange. The Honor Magic 5 Pro tends to produce a slight orange tint on darker skin tones. The Oppo's autofocus worked reliably in our tests, with only a few failures among our thousands of sample shots. The depth of field was wider than many other flagships, such as the iPhone 14 Pro, Honor Magic 5 Pro or Oppo Find X6 Pro, allowing for better sharpness on background objects. The device does not offer a shutter lag, and our measurements revealed a delay between pressing the shutter and actual capture of at least 200 ms in all conditions. This means that the Oppo is not the best choice when maximum speed is required. Below we can see lab measurements for Oppo and two of its competitors. iPhone performance was consistently accurate and fast. The Oppo was accurate but showed the aforementioned lag. However, Vivo showed the most potential for improvement. While autofocus was fairly accurate, it was slow and inconsistent across a series of shots. Texture tests analyze the level of detail and texture of objects in images captured in the laboratory as well as in real-life scenarios. For landscape shots, special attention is paid to the level of detail in the bright and dark areas of the image. Objective measurements are performed on chart images captured under different illumination conditions from 1 to 1000 lux and different types of dynamic range conditions. The charts used are the Special Xmark DMC chart and the Dead Leaves chart. Noise tests analyze different noise attributes such as density, color, granularity, and structure in real-world images as well as chart images captured in the laboratory. For natural images, special attention is paid to noise on faces and landscapes, but also in dark areas and high dynamic range conditions. Noise on moving objects in natural images is also evaluated. Objective measurements are performed on histogram images captured at different conditions from 1 to 1000 lux and different types of dynamic range conditions. The chart used is the Dead Leaves chart and the standardized measurements as visual noise derived from ISO 15739. In our testing, the Oppo Find X6 was the best device yet in terms of image noise. Despite the smaller image sensor and therefore more limited light gathering capacity than some competitors, image noise was usually very well under control, even in low light. The following graph shows that Oppo has been keeping noise levels very low in all lighting conditions. Compared to the iPhone 14 Pro, noise levels were much lower. Compared to the Vivo X90 Pro, the Oppo performed better in bright and semi-bright conditions but showed slightly more noise in low light. Artifact assessment looks at lens vignetting, chromatic aberrations, geometric distortions, edge ringing, halos, ghosting, quantization, and unexpected hue shifts. among other types of possible unnatural effects on images. The more severe and more frequent the effects are, the greater the discount points on the score. Below is a list of the main impacts observed and their corresponding point losses. Unwanted image artifacts were generally well controlled, but in some challenging HDR scenes our testers noticed some artifacts, such as ringing and halo effects. Bokeh was tested in one custom mode, typically portrait or aperture mode, and analyzed by visual inspection of all images captured in the laboratory and in natural conditions. The goal is to reproduce portrait images similar to those taken with a DSLR and a wide aperture. The most important image quality features that are paid attention to are depth estimation, artifacts, blur gradation, and bokeh shape. Portrait image quality attributes, exposure, color and texture, were also taken into account. The cameras use a 3x telephoto camera in portrait mode. This compresses the scene more than shorter lenses, making it ideal for portrait shots. In our tests, bokeh images also had excellent depth estimation and repeatability. Blur gradation was generally normal. The bokeh was subtle but could have benefited from a bit of contrast. The Oppo Find the preview image was generally similar to the final capture in terms of texture and noise. However, exposure differences were noticeable in challenging conditions and dynamic range was more limited. In bokeh mode, the blur intensity in preview was fairly similar to capture, but the differences in terms of depth estimation were noticeable. Like the Find X6 Pro, the standard Find X6 comes with major improvements over its predecessor in the zoom department. The telephoto zoom hardware is the same as the Find X6 Pro and uses a larger image sensor than most competitors. The dedicated telephoto lens offers a 3x zoom factor, versus 2x on the previous model, which equates to a 65mm equivalent focal length. For zoom factors between 1x and 3x, Oppo uses image fusion algorithms. Image data from base units and TV are combined in order to maximize picture quality. With this setting, the camera captured high levels of detail and generally good telephoto image quality in our tests. Image quality for the ultra-wide unit was generally good too, despite the Pro model's smaller image sensor. The Oppo Find X6's ultra-wide camera comes with a smaller sensor than the Pro model but still delivers fairly good results all around. Target exposure was good, with a wide dynamic range. Color was mostly accurate and the balance between texture and noise was good. Images were mostly sharp, with low levels of noise. However, the balance between texture and noise was not as good as in top-of-the-line devices, such as the Huawei Mate 50 Pro. The dedicated module for the Oppo Find X6 offers a 3x tele-zoom factor which translates to an equivalent focal length of 65mm. As in the Pro, image fusion is implemented between the 1x and 3x tele-zoom factors, combining image data from the base units and the tele-zoom. After 3x, digital zoom is used to crop the subject further. Videos recorded on the Oppo Find X6 showed a decent balance between texture and noise. Texture levels were generally high and noise was well under control, even in low light. White balance differences could be noticed at times, but overall skin tones looked natural in bright light and under typical indoor conditions. Video autofocus was generally fast and accurate, but our testers noted occasional glitches in high contrast conditions. Video stabilization effectively countered motion and kept frame shifts to a minimum. However, differences in sharpness between frames and jelly effects can sometimes be visible. In video mode, the Oppo Find X6 manages to get a good exposure in most conditions, even in low light scenes with dark skin models. However, our testers also noticed some exposure instability and abrupt transitions, especially in HDR scenes. Exposure adaptations can also be observed when photographing dark-skinned people in difficult conditions. Colors and skin tones were generally accurate in bright light and indoor conditions and all skin tones were well represented. However, a green-white balance difference can be observed in outdoor conditions. In low light, our testers often noticed an orange tint. White balance instability was also often noticeable, especially in indoor lighting. In comparison, the iPhone 14 Pro did a better job of managing colors in such situations. Video autofocus was generally quick and stable, but it was a little slower to converge than best in class. However, our testers noticed some failures in high contrast scenes. In this indoor panorama scene, You can see some instability on the Oppo Find X6 when the contrast in the scene increases. Oppo did a fairly good job of video stabilization. The frame shift was barely noticeable. The difference in sharpness between frames was well under control in indoor and outdoor conditions but can be a little visible in low light. Our testers also noticed a slight artifact in videos recorded with the phone mounted on a tripod. Artifacts are evaluated using MTF and ringing measurements on an in vitro SFR chart as well as frame rate measurements using an LED universal timer. Natural videos are evaluated visually by paying special attention to artifacts such as aliasing, quantization, occlusion, and color shift, among others. The more severe and frequent the artifact, the more points are deducted from the score. The major artifacts and corresponding point losses are listed below. Our testers noticed some aliasing in the Oppo's video footage, but overall unwanted video artifacts were better under control than those found on comparison devices. At the end of the video, I thank you for watching and I hope you liked it, and see you in a new video.